The power of really writing down one moment from every day of your life, it can't be understated. I started this little kind of journaling tool about 2 years ago. I called it personally a moment a day. It was just a way of journaling and collecting stories and experiences, but it's not quite journaling. I think that's the important distinction. What I'm really doing is trying to find what made today more interesting and special or impactful than any other day that I've had. And it doesn't have to be a long winded story, it can just be a sentence, it can just be an encounter, a word, just something that ignites an experience and a story that you had from that day. And when you see that or when you look back on that, it unravels that whole moment in your mind. I really began doing this as a way of capturing stories, funny moments, and just allowing me to use those small experiences as inspiration and motivation when trying to songwrite and trying to storytell. I think music and songwriting is basically storytelling. So if I'm able to draw on those experiences that I've had throughout my day-to-day life, it doesn't necessarily have to be autobiographical. It can be just observations about other people's experiences and certain things that I've witnessed or interactions that I've had. But it can just be anything that I wanted it to be. It just had to be done every day. And I learnt so many important lessons from doing this task and starting this little personal project. It first and foremost was a way of me deriving more meaning from the good, the bad, and the mundane days of my life. It's just a way of really kind of putting into perspective every single day and trying to draw out something interesting and something meaningful from what would otherwise be a pass off day. Most people will just let days come and go, and the next thing you know, half the year's gone by, or the next thing you know, a whole year's gone by, and there's really nothing to account for it. By being able to just dot point one small thing that really made that day special, more special than any other day, is that you're able to draw more value from your day-to-day life, and you're able to live with a bit more intention and a bit more meaning. What that does to a person is undeniable. You start to look at your day-to-day life through a lens of a real storyteller, and you start to interface with the world around you in a different way. You start to look at people in a different light. You start to observe things in a not so dismissive way. The small things might seem irrelevant to a lot of people, but to be able to take the time and just to stop and look around you and to really give each moment a bit more space to breathe and to evolve and to develop, you start to see a lot more interesting and funny moments. And it is those moments that you realize, wow, I would never have experienced that. I would never have even captured that moment if I didn't give myself the time, if I wasn't observing the world in this way. And it's difficult at first. It takes a lot of time, and some days just truly feel like nothing's happened. And so on those days, you have to kind of dig deep, because not every day is going to be a bit of an adventure, and not every day is going to come blessing you with crazy experiences and stories. But you can also just be proud of something that you've done. And it's whatever you want to make it to be. It doesn't have to be anything serious. It doesn't have to be with the intention of trying to tell stories. But what it will do is just allow you to appreciate the day to day. And it kind of makes each day feel a little bit longer. It kind of makes the year feel a little bit longer and more fruitful. You don't just end up going, oh, I don't remember what I did last weekend, when someone asks you what you did. You don't start to forget your little trip that you might have had to an outback area or to a really isolated part of town. You don't start forgetting the special moments that you might have had with a person you've never met before. I had that so many times, that experience where I would come back from something that was special in that moment, and when I tried to recount it, when I tried to think back on it, I can probably remember one special moment from that, but I know inside and emotionally at that point in time, I was experiencing a whole lot of different emotions and a whole lot of awesome experiences. And to only be able to come back a month later and be able to remember only one thing just felt like such a waste of a really precious point in my life. And I didn't want to let those moments kind of run away from me. You're not going to remember everything, that's fine. But in the moment, it's important to try to be able to file away those really special points in your life. And speaking of filing away, this whole idea of writing down a moment every day, it starts to become a little bit of a filing cabinet in your brain. It's funny because after doing it for a year, I'd just ask my close friends to name a random month and a date. And they do that, and I'd pull up my little table of notes, and I'd find that day, and the minute I read the one dot point, the small sentence or paragraph that I'd written for that day, just all the memories came flooding back from that specific moment. Everything before and after also started to piece itself together. And it was so awesome because oftentimes a week later I'd forget things, but the minute I read it again, I just knew exactly what was happening. I knew exactly how I was feeling. And your brain stores a lot more than you think, but it often needs that little spark, that little catalyst. And that is what these notes are for your brain. It's a catalyst to help you remember these stories, help you remember these memories. And whatever you choose to do with them is up to you. If you want to share them with other people, that's awesome as well. But if it's just something you want to do personally for yourself, I think it's invaluable. And it's really showed me a lot more about my day-to-day life and has helped open up my eyes a lot more. For me, my intention with it, like I said before, it was a way of drawing inspiration and ideas for songwriting. But I think for anyone interested in even trying this, just make the barrier of entry as low as possible for you. Just put 5 minutes aside, maybe at the end of the day, or if something happens during the day and you don't want to forget it, you can just use that time straight away to write a note. But just collect everything into one space. Put the date, put a little note. However detailed you want to be is up to you, but don't be discouraged if you only end up doing a small paragraph or a sentence. I think regardless, once you read that sentence back in a month's time, you will remember everything anyway. So it's just important that you try to capture those small moments, capture the mundane days, capture the bad days, capture the good days, obviously. And you'll realize that you start to live your day-to-day life with a lot more excitement about what you could interact with, what could happen. You don't know what's going to happen, so it's that unknown and uncertainty that creates a real excitement within you. And it just allows you to make the most of bad experiences and to really try to find the silver lining in things and to not let time pass you by without really making the most out of it and really trying to draw something that's meaningful to you from it. Don't try to live idly. Don't try to live as though days can just fly by and be dismissive of that, because that's time that you're never going to get back. And it's time that should really be documented for yourself at the very minimum. Really use it as a tool that you can look back on in a year, 2, 5, 10 years time. And I'm sure you'll be excited and thankful to your past self for really putting in the 5 minutes a day of documenting those special moments in your life. And you'll look back on it fondly with excitement. You'll have some awesome stories to tell. And you'll just be thankful that you took the time to really enjoy the day-to-day parts of your life.